Thank you, everyone, for staying with us on TMI. This great and very promising Thursday. Let's just put our first discussion on the road, the one that focuses on not just the Twitter ban, but the impact it has on the tech ecosystem. A lot of persons have pointed out on the socio-economic impact of this development, which is unfolding as it stands today. But quickly, I'm joined by two gentlemen to help us beat contests into these discussions that we have on the program this morning. Joining us from Lagos is Felix Imafido. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Recruit Technologies Limited, a financial technology outfit based in Lagos, Nigeria. Felix, it's a pleasure to have you join us this morning on the program.
Yeah, pleasure's mine as well. Nice to meet you.
Great. Yeah, so also joining us here in our live studio is Dr. Pedro Obaseki, political analyst with backgrounds cutting across politics, media, and technology. Essentially, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program, Doc.
Thanks to be here again.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Felix, I want to begin with you quickly because essentially you are in the tech ecosystem. Let's not talk about your reaction to all of this Twitter ban in Nigeria. Let's go ahead and look at, for example, how that we have a list of countries across the world that have not only banned a platform like Twitter, but that ban also stretches to other platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, for instance. This is 21st century, for example. What does this mean for development going forward?
Okay, I think before I quickly answer your question, it's important to note here that most countries that have done this, right, would give you, reasons why they're doing it. And a lot of the times, these reasons usually would boil down to simple things like control of misinformation, right, or control of information, as the case may be, right. So essentially, what that means is we need to first acknowledge that this is a sentimental thing for most of us, right? Because for many of us, Twitter is like a platform where our voices, we think or we believe that our voices can be easily heard, right? Now, however, there are challenges that we must first acknowledge. You go on Twitter, you see, pieces of information. The question is, how correct are these things? How true are these things? Why are people posting these things? Whilst, you have one side of the divide that are posting things that they believe are true. That you have the other side of the divide that are just posting things for different sentimental reasons, reasons to create some kind of sentiment or conversations around things that in some cases are just mostly misinformation, right? So in a bid to controlling misinformation and then in some cases information in itself, governments have decided, okay, you know what, let's have a bit of control. While for me here today, it's a good thing you have your political analyst in the studio who might be, speaking to the political angle for some of these things. For me, it's very simple. We've had countries who have done this in the past. On the extreme, you have the likes of maybe China, maybe North Korea, who have gone as far as, for example, even saying, people should not have access to the internet at all, right? If they need to, then we should be the one telling or directing or selecting for them what kind of access that they should have. You hear the likes of the Great China Firewall, for example, with which the government is deciding what kind of access or what kind of platforms, what kind of social media platforms the people within their own boundaries should have access to. In terms of impact, of course, the impact is it's for okay. So the personal opinion here, and of course a bit of professional opinion. You can look at this from a number of angles. The question is, what are people using Twitter for today?
Right.
For most Nigerians, it's an avenue for them to say what they believe is important for them. It's a platform for them to kind of have their voices heard. So when you show that a platform like Twitter, for some people it will be that you're saying, we don't want you guys to share your views anymore. We don't want you to have that platform through which you can air some of your views. Then by the time you look at this from an economic standpoint, it's a different story altogether.
I just want to follow up with a question before I come to Dr. Obaseki, who is live with us in the studio. As it stands today, statistics say we have no less than 39 million Nigerians who are active on Twitter. That's very significant in number if you look at our population and then you look at internet penetration in sub-Saharan Africa in particular. Let's look at how, for example, this also impacts ability to interact, how it impacts the activities of influencers who essentially have adopted Twitter as a platform to ply their trade.
Okay, so I think it's important to understand that times have changed. That's the truth. Years back, I needed to hear my views about a topic, for example. The question is, how would I do that? And if I'm going on whatever channel, how many people are likely to hear what I have to say, right? So maybe channels like your platform, a TV station, a radio station would be, a likely platform that I would have to air my views, right? But now, what platforms like Twitter have done is democratize conversations, So today I want to talk about Twitter ban, for example, right? I go on Twitter. I got a platform like Twitter, to say, okay, this is what I think. I might not be a very influential person per se, but the thing is, I could just be lucky, and then an influential person could retweet what I said, or just like what I said, or converse, or join the conversation, about what I'm saying, and then, voila, millions of people have heard what I've said, right? So the point is, it's important for us to first acknowledge that one of the things that platforms like Twitter has done is to create an open platform where, irrespective of whether you're an influencer or not, you have a place where you can say what you think you believe in, all right? Or join a conversation around a topic that you're interested in conversing about. Now, what a ban like this essentially has done is just take away that platform, right, from my hands, and just leaves me, maybe to some degree, handicapped as to sharing or talking about the things that I believe in, as it were. So yes, the impact as to people like influencers who have chosen Twitter, similar platforms to sharing their opinions, sharing their views, joining conversations about topics that are interested in. That impact really cannot be measured. Let's not also forget that some of these influencers, are brand ambassadors for a lot of institutions, a lot of businesses, a lot of brands, and they use platforms like Twitter, to influence the behavior of the people, of their audience, right? So, for example, a Coca-Cola influencer on Twitter will generally, drive conversations about drinks, about the Coca-Cola brand or whatever, on a platform like Twitter. Now, when with Twitter ban, in place right now, what that means is people like that would have to probably look for another platform, to do that thing that
I think that's where I'm going to bring you back into the conversation shortly, Felix. The alternatives to Twitter, homegrown in particular. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But quickly, let me talk about policy and framework going forward with Dr. Obaseki, who is live in the studio. The federal government is now saying that the social media platform people, the big tech as we call them, will not have to register their presence formally in Nigeria. They've mentioned guys like Twitter, Facebook, and the likes. And people are saying, look, let's step on our brakes here and take a look at whether it is even feasible to ask or demand that Twitter and Facebook be registered officially in Nigeria. There are those now saying that we're probably using the crude oil perspective to have a conversation about how business model around tech and all of these social media platforms should be working. Does it make sense essentially for us to say Twitter and Facebook be registered? Is that feasible at any point?
I don't know that I could start talking not by directly answering the question.
It's okay as long as we get to the question
Yes.
ultimately.
First, I want to let our viewers know that the digital ecosystem is peculiar, not to Nigeria. And as a result of that, the way we aggregate and address and interact, not only with ourselves, but also with the platform,
Right.
is global. Number two, the Nigerian government is beginning to act like a rogue, unquote. The reason I'm saying that is there is the statutes. There are the statutes, the laws. There is the National Broadcast Code. There is the Communication Code, which are all parts of acts of parliament that cannot be legislated away by fiat. Neither can they be amended by the executive arm of government, whose role is not to enact new laws, but to execute the ones already made by the legislature. So if what you are talking about now is something that is being brought before the parliament, the House of Rep, and the House of the Senate, or the National Assembly, to look at the enabling acts and laws and the limitations therefrom of the Nigerian Broadcast Commission, of which Pedro, I was one of those who helped draft the National Broadcast Code, and the National Communications Commission. I'm a licensee of the National Communications Commission, and I also sat on the board to write the code. It means that we are actually jumping the horse, jumping the gun. We are putting the cart before the horse. What is being played out is a lack of understanding by the Nigerian system, by the Nigerian government in addressing this issue. That is just a very simple thing. All this one we are talking, every other thing is a collateral fallout of this lack of understanding. There is the Twitter ban has created Nigeria, has painted or clothed Nigeria in a very terrible light. The Twitter as a platform is simply to extend your right to self-expression. It's just an extension. It's just an ability to balloon, or how will I put it, expand your capacity to express yourself. So anything that puts a rein on that without it being a law of the country is a truncation of the independent individual human right of the person in question. Now, at 39 million persons being taken by fiat off a platform simply because that same platform has accused our chief executive of flaunting the laid down laws, rules and regulations and terms of engagement on that platform.
So which obviously he has also subscribed.
That's what I'm coming to.
Upon registration.
Upon registration. Say if you click here, it means you have agreed to this terms.
Right.
It means that we are actually trying to rogue ourselves and rope ourselves in legitimacy. Nigerian government is trying to legitimize an illegality, a wrongdoing by a sitting president who decided out of personal anger, out of personal slight, to forget that he subscribed ab initio to the rules which he has just flaunted. And the platform simply says, delete. They did not remove the president.
It was not suspended.
They did not suspend the president. They did not ban the president. They just said, okay, now, the National Broadcast Law is simple. There is what we call NTBB,
right,
not to be broadcast. That is certain items or alterations that may cause public opprobrium, that may put the general public at risk. So when the president of a country writes on the repercussions as a reminder of a war of attrition, a war where Nigeria is like a nation at the junction of perdition, and a Twitter says, hi guy, you're saying you will deal with people the way you dealt with them in the 30-month war of 1967 to 1970 is an incitement. Please delete. And Twitter did not also delete because Twitter wanted to delete. Twitter deleted in reaction to several complaints made against that tweet, just the way it had reacted to several complaints made against something even less vociferous by the President of the United States, a company where the Twitter owners are citizens and residents. So what Nigeria has just shown is that we have elevated the person of the president to replace our grown norm, our standing statutes, our laws, our constitution. And at that point, what the presidency, that amorphous reference that we did not vote for, has done is to replace our constitution with the personal constitution, or the personal incomfortability, the personal, let me use very small pidgin, totori, that they have totoried our president for threatening to revisit a 30-month war that borders on the edge of genocide.
But is it out of place? Is it a misplacement of priorities? If we say, hold on a second, can we not regulate social media platforms, including Twitter, as the federal government has said?
You see, the federal government is just giving a dog a bad name so they can hang it. We are all aware that in the lifespan of this administration, in its first term and now, they've been fighting to muscle and muffle social media. It's not a secret. They've come up with bills, and people have rejected. You see, the nation is equal to the people in it. Is it like the Gestalt theory, where the sum total of the parts is equal to the whole, if not even larger than it? So we are not less than the presidency. We are the people. And the first line in our constitution is we the people. So every power in the constitution, including all the powers of Mr. President, is derived from we the people. So the moment we the people become the summary, collateral, punitive recipients of an action of government, that action is illegal, null and void, and of no consequence whatsoever. That is what is this is not a matter of calculating how many naira and kobo will be lost by not engaging on Twitter, or whether Nigeria should be regulating social media. That would be like a kid that missed the bus. If we are to regulate social media, if we are comparing ourselves to China, the comparison is absolutely out of sync, because you have to do it in situ. Number one, what is our practicing form of government? The Chinese is socialist, one-party state, where the party is the state and the state is the party, where President Xi and his whatever is equal to or even greater than the state. And they've been doing that since 1944. That is okay. Number two, Twitter, however, in muscling or trying to muscle some of these global brands, did not restrict access to capacity by its people to converse. So they created other alternatives. So there is WeChat, there is TikTok. Nigeria has not that. So not that they have removed Twitter from China. China is promoting its own brand,
right?
Its own alternatives,
competing with US equivalents.
Yes, because if we have 1.5 billion people out of the 7 billion on Earth, if every one out of 7 persons on planet Earth is Chinese, why should we leverage or piggyback on a technology that is driven by our major competitor? And then move all the nairas, all the yuans and renminbis of the Chinese, that is their currency,
right,
to the United States. That is not the case with us. Ours is punitive. It is not that the punishment is Twitter's. The punishment is Nigerians. Let me come home here. By banning Twitter, the federal government, no, it's not the federal government, the presidency, because that is what they are saying it is now, has effectively banned the capacity of Godwin Obaseki to talk to Pedro. Because whether we like it or not, every day, the other day, our governor is on Twitter. Because he knows that a sizable number of the upwardly mobile middle class and the younger ones in Edo State are on social media. Actively. You get my point? And whether we like it or not, we have to see this as it is. That we should beg Mr. President or the presidency, because the president never said anything so far, is the presidency. So we let you beg those people, those presidency, to realize that they are not doing Muhammadu Buhari any favors whatsoever. To even show this, the irony is that Mr. Malami puts a ban against Twitter and sends that ban to Nigerians via Twitter. So it's like Chichidodo, the Ghanaian bird that hates, pardon my French, shit, and yet eats the maggot from it. That hates feces, and yet feeds on the maggot from feces. It's funny. And to come and say you want to register Facebook as if Facebook is a localized service. Because the reason is this, let me explain. You see, the National Broadcast Code regulates the service provider,
right,
not the content originator. And as a result, it prescribes certain paradigms and certain restrictions on the service provider to maybe block the audience or the recipient or the consumer of the mass media product from certain infractions. So DSTV, for example, or ITV is a content provider. But ITV is also a service provider because you own your mast, you own your transmitters, you own a license to transmit on a certain frequency. But the content therefrom is totally going to be, you as ITV content producer, you'll be held responsible. So you are now saying that because a content provider, DSTV, or good, or any of the, let me not use any of the
pay TV
providers, we now have to go and tell CNN, which is a content on the platform. Don't forget that the carrier is your data provider, your MTN. You get my point? Your Glo or any of your service providers, any of the data providers.
Yeah.
So they are the ones who will make sure. So when you say you have to now register Twitter, it means CNN will come and get a license to broadcast into Nigeria. It means Al Jazeera will get it to come and broadcast without them having infracted or infringed on any existing statute or law. So once you are now saying, okay, Pedro, if you tweet, I will arrest you. Why? Where is it written? So I will now be scared of the personal incomfortability. I want to use that word as commonly as possible. So Mr. Malami sleeps on the wrong side with his wife and comes on public television and tells me I will be arrested for using Twitter or any other platform for writing a piece of paper. What it is, my brother, Twitter is just allowing you to write a piece of paper. It's just allowing you to write. But this time you are not writing your paper. You are not writing.
You're typing instead.
You are typing the same words.
So it's digital.
It's digitalized. And now instead of me sending it to you by hand or sending it to you by post, I post it on Twitter. So instead of sending it to one person or two, or sending it to people in my own little cubicle, I broadcast it online on the World Wide Web. So that is just the difference. The difference is the enormity of reception of what I had originated.
Right.
So when you do a ban on Twitter, it's like saying never write again. Don't public it, as in publish. When you public have access to what you have written, you have published it to the public. So what this thing is done
Yes.
is totally despicable, is totally unacceptable, and luckily technology exists to run around it, to circumvent it, because it's not even a circumvention. It's taking back what you really is
I want to
yours.
talk to you about that in a minute.
Yes.
But Felix, I've left you there hanging for a while, but let's get back to you right now. I've spoken with people off television in particular who have told me, look, this development, this Twitter ban, is a mix of several things. One of the elements they're pointing out now is that, who knows, this could just be a chance for Nigerians to look inward. I mean, we have brilliant, exceptionally innovative and resourceful young people across this country who can take the initiative to say, can we not develop something homegrown? I mean, I've known you for a long time. You have a history of developing smart apps, for example. You have colleagues who do that. I mean, within Yaba in Lagos, for instance, we have several hubs, people developing cutting-edge technology on a daily basis across platforms. Can we not do the China model by also developing something that is truly and fully Nigerian as an alternative to Twitter and the likes?
Yeah. So the question is, why not? Right? There's no impossibility with that, right? So anybody can wake up tomorrow and come up with something. In fact, one of the persons that make up, in quotes, the presidency, had shared his own homegrown app, that he said will replace Twitter. So yes, in terms of whether we have the infrastructure, whether we have the capacity to come up with something homegrown, the answer is yes, right? But then we must also be careful, because if we're using the China model as a yardstick to say, okay, let's develop something homegrown, it's also important to note here that one of the things about the China model is with the China model, the government has full control over that platform, all right? And what that also means is whatever kind of private conversations people are having on the platform, the government has access to that data. So the issue with privacy also comes, all right? So which I think at the end of the day, all of this still boils down to the same thing. What rights do people have? By the charter, people are supposed to have rights to their privacy. Now, if we're doing anything homegrown, it's also important to be able to say, okay, these are also the parameters around the engagement. These are going to be some of the rules that will guide the use of that platform, how data will be handled on that platform, because at the end of it, that's what it boils down to. So in terms of, can the technology be built homegrown, the answer is yes. But then we must be able to answer questions around how secure will the platform be? To what degree will the government have any sort of control or access to people's information on that platform? Data or information collected on those platforms, how will they be used, right? How protected will the users on those platforms be? Which is essentially what platforms like Twitter have been able to successfully do, guarantee you your privacy and a lot of that. So to answer your question directly, the answer is yes, and it will actually make sense. Make a lot of sense to be able to have something homegrown, because what that also means is whatever company or whatever institution, organization that will bring in this up, all use of data within that platform will be internal. So what that essentially means is as a sovereignty, right? Content of Nigerians on that platform would definitely be be owned by Nigerians, right? As against you're using a platform like a foreign platform, your data has to be transmitted from Nigeria to wherever, and then there are laws within those jurisdictions that guide the use of that information, whether or not the government can have access to that information and other considerations of that nature.
Okay, just before I let you off, in 1 minute, I mean, we can continue to lie to ourselves, but fact of the matter is, people are still tweeting on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, people continue tweeting even after this ban. I mean, thanks or maybe no thanks to virtual private network applications, VPNs, as we now know them. But the question is this sustainable? In other words, can we continue to rely on VPNs to circumvent or run circles around bans, such as the one we have in place right now?
Okay, so first of all, let me say, I've seen a lot of comments on different platforms, saying, okay, you go go around this by using a VPN, but I think it's important to note here, and I've also seen people posting things like you don't use a VPN, use a proxy and all of that. I think it's important to state here that when you use a proxy kind of design to access an external service or a VPN kind of design, whatever it is, to access a third-party service, what happens usually is that your information would have to be, for want of not using technical terms, your information would have to be exposed, transmitted through someone else's platform or server, as the case may be. Now, what that does is it exposes your information to being captured by that person who is standing in the middle between you, who is trying to access a service, and the service that you're trying to access. So it's important to note that people need to be very careful about the choice of whatever tools that they're using to go around bans of this nature. Now, to answer your question, yes, is it sustainable? Now, it depends, right? Now, for example, it depends on how far the government is willing to go in terms of creating infrastructure to make this ban happen, right? So, for example, if they're going the total China, North Korea model, what they could also do is to prevent you access to these VPNs. And now the question is, how possible is that? To a very high degree, it is possible, right? For example, the government could say, okay, we're going to collect all the IP addresses of these VPNs or proxies or whatever, right? And then at our own internal level, we tell the telcos to block access to these IPs completely. And so what happens is, the so-called VPN that people are using right now, they might not be able to use it altogether. They could go as far as creating their own firewall, do deep packet inspection. Anyway, to cut all the technical jargon short, the point is, right now it may seem sustainable, but now the question is, how far is the government willing to go? Whether or not, according to the analysts, they're breaking laws or, creating whatever kind of personal constitutions or whatever, right? Point is, if the government is willing to go very far with this, there's a possibility, there's a chance, a very high chance that they could, pretty much just say, people should not be able to access services at all. And in fact, should not be able to access even these proxies, VPNs, or whatever workarounds that we're currently using. So it might be sustainable. Definitely, there's a possibility that it's actually not.
All right, Felix, thank you so very specially for deciding to spend a part of your breakfast time with us this morning. TMI all the way from Lagos here in Nigeria. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, Simeon.
All right. So Dr. Pedro Obaseki, I get back to you now, and then we talk about how that we have to begin to balance the law with the realities that we have on our hands right now. Technology is here to stay. We can't run away from that. As a matter of fact, people say we are supposed to use technology, leverage technology to drive development across different sectors of our national life. I know you have personally condemned this. As a Nigerian, this move by the federal government, but some people also say that any other government probably would have intervened somehow, even though this one has become controversial, essentially. In 1 minute, what can we do given where we are at this point with this ban going forward?
I think the ban should be lifted. You see, Felix explained a lot of stuff now over the VPN and the stuff.
Right.
What it just boils down to is this. Because the president erred in his tweet, all Nigerians are now suffering the collateral fallout. That is my real point. What I mean is simple. The VPNs it's just simple. If we can do that one, they don't even need to go out far. It's just for them to list all the virtual private networks,
right,
which they call VPN, and other proxies that can access data or stream data or download or upload data, and impute them into a server that is at the gateway of the service provider. It's a node.
Yeah.
So when you insert it in the server, is simply a computer. It could be a laptop that is connected to some hypervisors. And then all of a sudden, all the VPNs will not even open on Google Store.
So they become useless.
It becomes useless. And it can be done actually in 1 day.
Right.
But what does that mean? It means that the president is angry with Twitter. And because the president, as a human being, because the president did not post that thing as president, he's human.
Right. First.
He posted it on Twitter as M Buhari. So General Muhammadu Buhari, the president of Nigeria, posted a tweet that violates the standing rules and regulations of Twitter, which Muhammadu Buhari had ab initio subscribed to and agreed to. And in anger that Twitter felt, I'm trying to break it down so that Nigerians will understand. Twitter, because Twitter removed that tweet, it did not remove Buhari, it did not suspend Buhari, but it simply removed the tweet that Buhari tweeted, threatening a part of Nigeria that they will come down hard like they did in the 30-month war of 67. They just deleted it. And in anger, so what we are facing right now is the acts of dictatorial pomposity. We are faced with a Pompeian syndrome. You know, Pompey, the emperor of Rome. And that's where we got the word pompous. You know, a Cavalian disposition. Now me dey in charge, now me get everything. So because you remove waiting I talk when it's not good, I go scatter everything. That is what we are facing. It's a situation where chasing the rat, you've broken the entire pot, and the rat is so damn big, Nigeria is too small a country to capture it. That is the truth. Now, what are other collateral fallouts? Economically, let's forget about Pedro cannot tweet, or Godino Obaseki cannot tweet, or Governor Sheyi Makinde cannot tweet, or even Buhari and Madam, who likes to tweet a lot. The longest tweet I've seen on Facebook, on Twitter, is the tweet Aisha Buhari tweeted against Oshomole. After the primaries of 2018, it was a 26-page tweet. So she's a Twitter aficionado. Now, outside of that, the total advertising, the net gross advertising exposure in 2020 in Nigeria was roughly 149 or 143.9 billion.
On Twitter?
No,
okay.
Generally. Out of which 35% of that was on social media alone. Out of which 30-something to 40% is on Twitter. Not Twitter as by Twitter getting revenues for Twitter, but also Nigerians surviving. You use the word social media influencers. No, these are people who have a livelihood, employable but not employed. So they become employers of self via Twitter. So take Twitter out, you take food off their table. So not only has the president removed their right to express themselves, the president is also in a country with a high propensity and an uncalculatable inflation rate, a country where the PPP, the purchasing power parity of our naira, is becoming as close to that of the Ugandan shilling in the times of Idi Amin, at a time where young Nigerians are hungry and angry. The president is taken away by his ill-advised anger the food from the tables of these young persons. That is the truth. Now, we also look at, finally, sorry, Uyi, don't be offended. If not for Twitter and similar media like it, how would Nigerians have appreciated NSAS? If not for Twitter and platforms like it, how would Edo people have defended Godwin Obaseki's votes? If not for Twitter and platforms like it, how would the guy in Lagos who was stranded under the bridge that is crippled and everybody start raising money for him? How, it is so ill. It's just what we've done is that Nigeria is being catapulted back to the 70s when we had to suffer the fallouts of jackboot democracy. I'm talking as the driver of Radio Kudirat. I will never agree in public or in private for the muscling or emasculating of Nigerians. What the president has done now is, in terms of expression of self, he has just thrown a noose around everybody's neck.
I want to seek your opinion on something else quickly. And by the way, that is our second discussion this morning. By the time will fail us to go full throttle on our second discussion. So basically, we're just going to look at the core issues in this very important situation. I mean, very, as it were, some people say nasty, others say it's a watershed moment for Nigeria. The issue of security or insecurity in Nigeria. The House of Rep Speaker himself has spoken out again now, and this time he's saying, look, from all of the things that we're seeing, all of the killings across this country right now, it's virtually a war-level situation that we're dealing with. When somebody in the office, somebody in the person of the Speaker of the House of Representatives speaks in that manner and makes such a remark, what message does it send to you as a Nigerian in particular?
It just shows that, you know, we're on public TV, so I have to also be careful. Because
by all means, you should be.
I value the license holder, and I respect him, and I respect the establishment. But what we face is moved from a threat to an existential one. The Nigerian nation today is faced with an existential threat. And all this is self-inflicted, self-constructed, self-designed. That is the failure of the state to provide security for the lives and property of those who own those lives is a total failure of government. The first responsibility of government, the first responsibility in governance, whether in the political or associate or allied state, is the provision of security of lives and property. And if Nigerians are getting killed by the gross, if Nigerians are getting assassinated, because these are execution-style assassinations, Nigerians are beheaded, kidnapped, reduced, bombed, either by government or by rogue elements, it is a time to sit back and tell ourselves the truth.
And what is the truth?
The truth is, we are a race on its knees. Nigeria is a failed state.
But
it's a terrible thing.
A lot of persons have said that the indices of a failed state, in the case of Nigeria, for example, have not been altogether established. So how do we make sense of that?
What constitutes a failed state?
Maybe you want to talk to us about that.
Okay, beautiful. You see, people just we just sit down for a parlor, beer parlor, just they talk. Sorry, I'm going pigeon. So that Nigeria, all of us understand that. What are the indices of a failed state? Any state where a non-state actor begins to dispense authorities of state is a failed state. That is, when persons who are non-state actors, that is, they not be police, they are not the army, they are not the navy, they are not any of the instruments of state security, begin to append, dispense policing or constabulary roles, even up to vigilantes, and you have persons saying, sit at home, and everybody sits at home, but these persons have absolutely no legislative, executive, or judicial powers empowered to them or given to them by the Constitution, is a failed state. When Mahatma Gandhi came up with his peaceful protest against the British in the late 1930s and early 40s to fight for independence for India, it was Mahatma Gandhi, a man who wears little or no clothes, says, let's march from India, from Delhi, let's march to Bombay, and everybody is marching. And the British government says, don't march, everybody disobeys. It's a failed state. Now, when people are using other means of marketing, barter, trade, that is not regulated by state, is a failed state. When everybody has capacity to carry guns, irrespective of state security restrictions is a failed state. When the government cannot respond to, provide for the security of even those in government, when the convoy of a state governor is restricted, attacked, bombed, and to date, not a single person has been arrested for same, it's a failed state. All the indices of a failed state, I'm not talking about the psychosomatic interactions now, or the social interaction, or the cultural ethnocentric interactions. Say, okay, I be Yoruba, I be Bini, those ones have not brought them into play. When in a particular milieu, a geographical state, an expanse of land that has one nationhood and one law, a Nigeria, for example, and you cannot transverse from one point of it to another without taking into consideration your ethnicity, your wealth, you have to be poor now to travel on the road, so that there will be nothing to steal. There will be nothing to kidnap you for. But can any of these big men just enter motor now from Benin to Abuja without hordes of police escorts who are so not safe? Come on, man. Let's wake up and smell the coffee. Every indices of failure of apparatuses of state to function as determined by the constitution and other norms of state and other infrastructure of state that gives state credence. Once they crumble, the state has crumbled. What has, however, different in Nigeria is we are a very peculiar people. If Nigerians were not Nigerians, or if all these things happening in Nigeria was happening somewhere else, it would have been a much more aggravated situation. Every Nigerian, we are resilient. We are the only people who will spray minted money at birthday parties, even when banks are on strike. We are the ones who will buy new fuel guzzling SUVs when the petrol refineries aren't working and petrol stations are closed. That is our nature.
Incidentally, Dr. Obaseki, this is the much we can take this morning, but I know you would have loved to stretch this a bit further, given the enormity of the challenges that we're dealing with in Nigeria as it stands today. We've just been told that even customs has now adopted, the Nigeria Customs Service, that is adopted about 404 Naira 97 Kobo as standard exchange rates for tariff.
For the dollar?
Yes, for the dollar. 404 and a fraction. All right. What that means is that there's work to be done across sectors in this country. In the meantime, I want to say thank you so very much for coming on the program and share with us this morning. That's what we're leaving it with this interview. We're back shortly to keep talking on the show this morning. Stay with me.